I found this new channel. This guy's pretty smart. He sounds like he's a libertarian. Sounds like he's a classical liberal, libertarian. Sounds like he could be a Freemason. He had this really long presentation on Gnosticism, like this, he calls it like the Gnostic disease or something. See, he's talking about a technique of like mystic philosophers, how they take over society. He's talking about how Marx is a mystic, which I've heard many times. Marx was trained by Hegel. Hegel had some ties to like Jesuits, and he was into some sort of mysticism. It actually made a lot of sense. Marx is saying that private property is what gives us our individualism. So if we abolish property, then we all become a part of the one. So it's kind of like this Platonic mystical thing where if none of us have private property, we all become one. And the demiurge is the bourgeoisie. The demiurge separated us from the one through capitalism. So we can defeat the demiurge and all become a part of the one by abolishing private property. And then mystics kind of like subvert the order of things by pretending that they know better. I'm really big on private property and property rights. Yeah, I am too, man. I'm very open-minded with liberalism right now. Like, as I've been studying natural law, I went up the chain. The 4 philosophers of natural law in order. It starts with Aristotle, then it goes to Thomas Aquinas, and then John Locke. And I was thinking, stereotypically, it's like, oh, the Enlightenment is cucked. Aristotle's based. Thomas Aquinas is, like, peak-based. And then I kind of assumed I wouldn't like John Locke, but John Locke is very reasonable. A lot of the Enlightenment philosophers are very reasonable. I still think after I get studied up on, Enlightenment philosophers, Lockean, natural law, classical liberalism, I'll still reject it for like monarchism and earlier philosophies, but there's a lot of edgelords online who just, everybody kind of parrots that. Oh, the Enlightenment's cucked, classical liberals are cucked. You should definitely study it. So I watched this guy's hour introduction to classical liberalism, and he was talking about, he was pulling the whole, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Francis Bacon was into alchemy. He said the emphasis of classical liberalism is that we are not God. And I definitely respected that. But it's based off of a deistic God. You can definitely see how it comes from Freemasons. They have more of a philosophical deist concept of God. And they're like, we don't know what God is. And we don't even know if God can exist. We don't even know if God exists or not. We don't know what God is. But what we do know is that we are not God. And out of that humility and respect, knowing that we're not God, nobody has the right to be a sovereign. Nobody has the right to declare ultimate knowing. So we know that we don't know because we're not God. So there's kind of this indefinite not knowing. Hence, kind of laying the groundwork for science, where people, they create models and they try to know through the scientific method, and models have like a lot of accuracy, but then they recognize that they could be proven wrong at any point, which happens, like gravity from Newton was a great model and it worked very well, but then we got relativity from Einstein. And of course, I've heard things like relativity doesn't even make any sense, but I have to be honest and say, I'm not really an expert in physics. I'm not going to act like I know for a fact that relativity is bullshit. So I'm trying to hear out classical philosophers or classical liberals, they definitely sound intelligent, but he kind of just went on a huge rant about scientific models and he did the whole, it doesn't matter if Isaac Newton was into alchemy. It doesn't matter when people are trying to write these people off because they're into alchemy. It's like, we're not boasting up John Locke. It's just that John Locke figured some things out. It doesn't matter if John Locke was wrong about the tabula rasa. So one of the things I notice about liberalism is that classical liberalism, it gives a lot of elbow room for people to be wrong. And that's what people say about science. Like, it doesn't matter if science was proven wrong. So people can, like, continue to be wrong and be disproven, but at no point do you lose any respect for the system of classical liberalism or the scientific method, which is a convenient way for it to always stay in power. But they'll be like, oh, well, it's not about staying in power. Like, you know, we know that we're not God, so none of us have the right to have power. Ultimately, it's based on merit. And I see how it came to power, and I see how it was respected, but now I think I see some of the flaws in it. So, I mean, I let myself be open to it, bro. I saw a point where it's like, oh, wow, like, you know, maybe I'm just kind of an edgelord saying that I'm a monarchist, and maybe at some point I'll be talked into the Republic, and I'll start to grow up and realize, oh, you know, the Enlightenment philosophers were intelligent, and we're not cavemen anymore. I mean, on paper, you definitely understand why you would want liberty, freedom, and property. That's ultimately what liberalism really comes down to. We're not God. We have the right to freedom, property, and liberty. And classical liberals are very against the surveillance state. This guy's talking about how ultimately, you know, we shouldn't be spied on through the internet. There's a big emphasis on privacy. But there's a lot of memes kind of making fun of libertarians. It's like, why do you want so much privacy, dude? Like, what exactly are you trying to do in your little private Ancapistan? I don't even really want to get into where those memes lead, but liberalism gone woke is communist. Yeah. And then I got to go back to, like, my old research, which is just that, I mean, what people point out, first of all, is that classical liberalism is not the same as what people say liberals now. People are like, oh, these damn liberals. I mean, it's strange because, yeah, wokeism is like Marxism, communism, cultural Marxism. It's definitely not the same as liberalism, but you can see how liberalism was a stepping stone toward that. The liberals did the heavy lifting, turning everybody against monarchism, and kind of paved the way for Karl Marx. So, and then I got into some fascinating discussions about Hitler. So what people were saying about Hitler is he was meant to be like a Zelensky. And what they're saying about Zelensky is that he's a puppet in the Ukraine war. He's basically meant to just feed people into the fires of the war. So Hitler was like a glowy who was supposed to be a puppet dictator who just fed Germans into the fire. He was basically meant to go along with the war and feed Germans into the fire of war for the purposes of the deep state and the banks, which is what Anthony C. Sutton's pointing out. Anthony C. Sutton points out all this big money Wall Street funding that was allowing Hitler to do what he was doing. But what they're saying is that Hitler went rogue. So Hitler made all these agreements behind the scenes to be like this Manchurian candidate to lead the Germans into a losing battle. But at some point, Hitler went rogue and tried to win. And that's why everybody all of a sudden ganged up against him. And it makes a lot of sense, bro. People point out things like, oh, well, Wall Street was backing Hitler. And Time magazine boasted up Hitler. Britain wanted Hitler to take out the USSR. They wanted Hitler to take out Russia, and then they were going to take out Hitler. That was the plan. And then the United States... So yeah, Britain and the United States wanted Hitler to take out Russia. And the plan was they were going to fund whoever was winning the war so that they could basically... It's like in Super Smash Brothers, when you kind of wait in the corner to let everybody else kill each other, and then you jump in and fight whoever's left over. That was the plan. And Hitler was supposed to be a good boy and just kind of take on the communists and then be ready to lose. But they were not planning on the pact between Stalin and Hitler. That's when Hitler went rogue. So, yeah. Interesting little theory there. That would explain the Wall Street money connections to Hitler. Basically, Hitler infiltrated the banks. Hitler got the Wall Street funding so he could have his war, but then he didn't do what he was told. And that's what it looks like, because all of a sudden everybody crowded him. But you could say everybody crowded him because he was trying to take over the world. So, I don't know, man. The key to understanding who's in charge is understanding what happened to World War II. And I saw a lot of interesting theories last night.
Everyone, or good afternoon, I guess, to some. Poppy is...
People were going into detail about Thule, the Thulean Society. Some people were saying the Thule Society is just like undercover Freemasonry. And that's another example of how Hitler was just a glowy. He was controlled by undercover Freemasonry. But yeah, lots of good thinking last night. So then I'm thinking about the evolution of natural law. And it's like, what changed between Thomas Aquinas and John Locke? First thing that stands out is John Locke expected less of people. And I definitely see how it paves the way for a less authoritarian, kind of monarchist society. Thomas Aquinas expected that everybody would naturally understand the natural law, and John Locke didn't. He said that people would have to learn it. Everybody could potentially learn it if they set out to, but you don't naturally know it. Hence the tabula rasa, the blank slate. In fact, I'm just now putting that together. That's in line with the blank slate. In Thomas Aquinas, the natural law is naturally imputed on our hearts, like the Bible says. But John Locke seems to think we're blank slates who are capable of learning. That gives people an excuse.
Remote. Poppy's a little spooked right now. Alright, let's
Anyway.
scoop you up, Poppy. Put you in your little hanging bed.
Build without permits and do it at night. Let's go.
Little nap. Good girl. And we'll say hello to Paxton.
Man, I've had so many different chores this
Say hello
week.
to everyone.
I have not been working out or playing drums.
Bud.
And I feel like today, because I woke up so early, I only got like 4 hours of sleep, maybe 4.5 hours of sleep.
happened to Paxton.
Probably
His
not going to work out
previous
again.
Owner actually
I probably have to force
had,
myself to work out today.
not been caring for him properly, neglected an infection in his hand, which I think was just due to her not clipping his nails, and he ended up chewing his little hand, and they had let the infection go so long that we had to have his arm amputated. He's doing pretty well now. Whoop. They had let the infection go so long that we had to have his arm amputated. He's doing pretty well now. Whoop. Ain't bad.
Yeah, I think I want to get some burpees in today. Burpees, abs, and threshold training. I at least stretched the day before yesterday. I got a little bit of a soreness in my triceps from stretching.
Boy, Pax is pretty healthy. He even his coat, his fur has completely changed. It's becoming much softer, much richer, and he's definitely become much more active. He's got so much personality. But I've got to get going. We're gonna head out, run some errands, so we will talk to you all later. Just wanted to say hello and give everyone an update. Have a great day, everyone. All right, Pax. Bye. Cheeky rods. All right. Bye, everyone.
Whew, yeah. Probably end up taking a nap today. I'm worried about Mortal Kombat, dude. I was playing Mortal Kombat 1 yesterday. I was getting my ass beat. But this version of Mortal Kombat 2 and 3 that I got should be a lot smoother on the PS2. Whew. I'm going to show you guys this guy. New discourses. Let's watch one of his shorter videos. The need for linguistic discipline, how the woke infiltrate, communist entryism, critical education is brainwashing. Yeah, so classical liberals definitely don't like wokeism, but they're a little bit up their own asses, and they talk about how we basically can never know anything for sure, and it's very convenient for their worldview. It is definitely where this like arrogant atheist science developed from, which is ironically kind of what's been being used against them. It's like if they're wrong, it doesn't matter because they admit that they could be proved wrong at any moment. So they talk about how they're humble because they admit they're not God. but then they take credit for everything they get right. And then when they get something wrong, they're like, oh, well, it doesn't matter because we admit we could be wrong at any time. So it's kind of this system where you're not really able to explain to them that they're getting a lot of things wrong because they admit that they're going to be wrong, and then they boast that up like it makes it the ultimate system. The one thing we know for certain is that Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior. And of course, these Freemason, cuck, classical liberals will put that to the same scrutiny as everything else. It's like, well, we don't know. We need to create models, and we have to consider that could be disproven at any moment. It's like, no, you're a cuck. And you've ruined society. And pretty much everything bad is your fault. Let's go. Marx's straw man of capitalism. Degrowth is communism. An open letter to woke youth. How to prevent revolutions. On life, liberty, and property. Let's watch this one. Life, liberty, and property. This is some more classical liberal basics.
Hello everybody, this is James Lindsay. You're listening to New Discourses Bullets, where I give a bullet point summary of one topic relevant to us defeating woke Marxism. And in this episode, I'm going to continue from where I left off in a previous episode and talk more about the preface or preamble to the Declaration of Independence. I want to stick with the curious phrasing at the beginning. There are two particular parts in the very opening that kind of stick out to people. In the previous episode that I was referring to, I talked about the concept where Jefferson says that we take these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And we talked about what is meant in the American context by being created equal. Equal political authority, equal access to very little political authority, and nothing you can't demonstrate that you should have. But today I want to go further. He says, in addition, what else is a truth that is self-evident? It's not just that we are created equal by the laws of nature and nature's God. It's in fact that we are endowed by our Creator, the laws of nature and nature's God.
Okay, so here's another thing that classical liberals do. They talk about how everything is meant to be held up to scrutiny all the time. You can't know anything for sure because you have to admit that we're not God, and any individual could be disproven at any time. But then they say things like all men are created equal. And it's like, well, can't that be put up to scrutiny as well? Wasn't it also men? Because what they're going to say about religion is like, oh, well, ultimately the religious books were written by men, and we can't know for sure whether or not they're accurate. Well, men are the ones coming up with these classical liberal laws, like all men are created equal. Well, can't somebody be wrong about that too? Can't that be held to scrutiny? How come that's a given? How come that is a golden law? You know, like, they kind of like don't apply their own system to their own values. Notes from the Underground. Dude, I listened to the audiobook of that recently. It's good stuff.
With certain inalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, the pursuit of happiness is perhaps the most mysterious phrase in the Declaration of Independence. And, I mean, perhaps Jefferson was very sagacious and wise in choosing this word or phrase, as opposed to the origin story of it. I'm not utterly convinced of it because of its kind of diffuse nature and ambiguity. But Jefferson derived this sentiment, this statement, from a very similar sentiment from John Locke, which was that humans have inalienable rights, human beings by virtue of being human. All endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and property. And the purpose, Locke explained, of having a secured right to property is that property enables your pursuit of happiness. So Jefferson very likely would have understood the pursuit of happiness to have been a broader category of inalienable right within which property rights are contained. And perhaps that's true. Perhaps it means that you have your property and you're able to do what you will with it, for example. It's not merely that you have your things, it's that you can use them in pursuit of your own fulfillment, whether that's through enjoying them, whether that's through capitalizing upon them, and when you capitalize upon them, perhaps expanding them into greater wealth or greater building or prosperity or whatever. This, though, is what is declared as a self-evident truth, that we are endowed by natural law with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and property. And this episode wants to dig into why. Why those? Why life, liberty, and property? Why are these why is this, as a matter of fact, the fundamental core statement of classical liberalism? You can get into all the things Locke got wrong, like the blank slate. You can get into all of these things that the post-liberals like to argue and nitpick and often misinterpret, whether they're woke post-liberals, whether they're reactionary post-liberals, whether they're Christian national post-liberals, whichever ones you want. They all seem to get these things wrong, but this is the fundamental articulation of what it means to be a philosophical classical liberal, that all men are created. We take this truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator, which is the laws of nature or nature's God. We're not going to lay a claim on what it actually is, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights.
So what this guy says is that you can't even know whether or not there's a God. But at the same time, they say that there is a God. It's this deist concept of God. It's like, all we know is that we're not God and that we're all created equal under God. It's like, okay, where do I read about your God? Because my God is the Christian God. I really want to hear what this guy has to say about Christianity specifically. He has a 3-hour video on Christian nationalism. He keeps taking shots at Christian nationalism, and he calls it post-liberal. Yeah, I want to dig deeper into this guy, because I'm getting this air of arrogance from him. He really loves his little classical liberal LARP.
Among these, so not necessarily exhaustively, among these are life, liberty, and property. And I'm not going to go with the pursuit of happiness thing. I kind of explained how I think that is merely the same concept extended. Not just a right to have property, but to use property as you will to pursue your happiness. Now, I want to remind you before I dive into life, liberty, and property one more time, by the way.
I'll check that out after this.
If you're looking for something to do that's productive and useful for fighting the woke, this is something you can do. You don't have to agree with my interpretations, by the way. You can study the founding documents for yourself, with others, with children, with young people, with teenagers. We're not getting this kind of education right now. You can get together, you can create reading clubs, you can do it independently, you can start writing a blog, keep a Substack, make videos, going through the original founding documents of the American experiment and understanding clearly what we're trying to preserve and rescue from the ravages of woke Marxism. And what we are ultimately trying to preserve boils down to that statement. And in particular, the fact that they are trying to abrogate our inalienable rights. They're trying to alienate inalienable rights, which means they are fundamentally in the wrong. Oh, those rights are, or include, I should say, not are, life, liberty, and property, and its use in the pursuit of happiness, or flourishing, or prosperity, or whatever it is that we believe leads us in that direction. And the question is, why those particular inalienable rights? Why do we have a right to life, liberty, and property? Now, we can say that we can kind of get philosophical or metaphysical and say that as an individual person, as a sentient being that's not sentient even just the way that the animals are, but rather with the faculty for reason, that we definitely cannot. Essentially, what it boils down to is that nobody, we don't have a perfect right to life. We have an inalienable right to life, which means no human being, including ourselves, has a right to take our lives from us. That's what it means. Inalienable rights are rights that can neither be taken from you nor given away. So we cannot be deprived of our life. Nobody has the authority, the necessary to take our life away from us because of our standing as a human being, which means a creature that is fully equipped with capabilities for reason, for understanding the world around him and himself and his place in that world. This is something that is fairly unique to humans. It may be entirely unique to humans. In the Christian worldview or the religious worldviews, often it's in fact said that this is what makes humans uniquely different from animals, is that we were created in this way in the image of God. So we have this inalienable right to life. We could get, this is the metaphysical argument. I want to get to the practical argument, but let's do the others. What about liberty? Well, we are ultimately free individuals. What person could lay a claim on taking away our liberty, our ability to be free, to move about, to do as we will? Who could claim that? And the answer is nobody, really, with one exception. In the liberal system, because we know that people will misuse their liberty to injure the liberties or lives or property of others, we have to come up with some kind of a system, largely a criminal justice and penal system, to deal with violations of these laws, because the role of the government is to secure those rights, and they can't be secured if we allow, say, criminals or monopolies or tyrannical government entities to bulldoze them. And so what we have to do is we have to come up with a system that we've done in the West, which is called the rule of law. The law is not a man. The law is created by men. It is changeable by men, but it is not man. And in the end of the day, everybody has to be bound by the law. That allows, when you have violated the law, which is supposed to reflect these inalienable rights, and that's how our system is created, when you have violated the law and thus violated somebody else's inalienable rights, you can be held to account for that by the law, and that's part of the system. But other than that, nobody has political authority. The people given political authority to take our liberty in these contingent circumstances are in fact there with our consent under our system. And the third is this pursuit of happiness, or really property with its use in the pursuit of happiness, that is so mysterious. But it's the same thing. Nobody has the right to come lay a claim on somebody else's stuff. Whatever it is that made that stuff yours, that gave you a legitimate claim on ownership, nobody else has the authority to just sweep in and alienate that right, to abrogate it and take it from you. Very simple. Okay, so what practically is going on here? Well, this is a country founded on the fundamental idea that we are free people, that we are individuals with our own minds, our own capacity for reason, our own ability to navigate the world, as limited, as flawed, as fallen, as clumsy, as stupid as that might be. And that no other authority has the ability to speak into that, or step into that, or fight into that, or force into that, and control our own destinies. So, as such, and in particular, you have to be able to reason with the world as well as you can. You see, all men are created equal. And what did we say that means? All men are created equal means that we're all created equal in our capacity to understand, to use our faculties for reason, our senses, our labor, our efforts, to understand and operate in the world around us. And therefore, we have to be able to work out things for ourselves. We have to be able, and in particular, if you're religious, which was a big issue at the founding of the United States, religious liberty is, in fact, probably the founding reason for the American experiment, whatever the revisionists in the Christian nationalist camp want you to believe by misappropriating a quote from John Adams. Religious liberty is huge, and this is a very serious issue. But the idea is that if a king, let's say, King George or King Fauci or King Biden or something like this, or King Obama or somebody, maybe King Trump, who knows. If an authority could step in and take away your life or your liberty, so they could kill you or jail you, or your property, or your ability to use your property as you will in the pursuit of happiness, then they can control how you think, believe, and act. You are no longer a free person. So you are no longer a person who is created equal, because you are now subject to the people who can control you. And that violates your fundamental inalienable rights, according to the axiom of classical liberalism. So practically speaking, they can control your belief, they can control your thought, they control your speech, they can control your action, like we see in every totalitarian state and authoritarian state that's ever existed, if they can deprive you of these inalienable rights. So the practical argument, not the metaphysical argument, that they don't have authority because where did that authority come from, blah, blah, blah. That authority maybe is only vested in God if we want to get theological, blah, 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 blah. That's not the point. Practically speaking, the people who wrote down the axioms of classical liberalism, and Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration, wrote it into the preamble of the Declaration of Independence, understood very, very clearly that if you can be deprived of your life by some external authority, you can be deprived of your liberty by some external authority, or you can be deprived of your property and its use in the pursuit of happiness by some external authority, then you are not a free individual. You are in chains. You are a subject to them, which is what they were rejecting. If we accept the axiom, this has to be the case. Therefore, the rights to life, liberty, and property and its use in the pursuit of happiness are inalienable. Now, this is obviously, therefore, what collectivists have to attack. They want to attack your right to life, but by the time they do that, we recognize that they are far, far, far over their skis in terms of how much power they're using. So they can't use that immediately. They would like to use they would like to deprive you of your right to liberty. In free countries, they can't easily do this either. They can't simply start jailing political dissidents or whatever, although we're now encroaching into that soft level of totalitarianism. People are being jailed for hate speech. People are being jailed for incorrect opinions. People in Ireland, for example, are now being surveilled in terms of what's on their phone and can be held to criminal charges for it, which is alarming if it's misinformation or disinformation. Obviously, the J6 prisoners and some of the things that are happening with people in Trump's orbit are political persecution, which is all in violation of this fundamental concept of violating people's liberty. But if we look to a harder but not fully totalitarian circumstance like we see in China, then there are harder totalitarian systems than China. Stalin had one, for example. Hitler had one. Mussolini had one. There are harder ones than the one we see in China. Although the one in China is pretty hard. We now see this idea of using a social credit score to limit your capacity to do things. We're seeing the building of these kind of 15-minute city or neighborhood surveillance blocks where you can't leave without passing through a turnstile, and the turnstile doesn't let you through unless you look into a camera, have your face scanned, and smile for the government. They actually say that, smile for the government, and make you smile, and then it takes your picture, and then it knows where you are. In other words, it's tracking your movement. And so people's rights to liberty are being curtailed under that totalitarian state. And those people are no longer free. Those people are much less free than people even in the soft totalitarianism of the West, particularly countries like the UK and Canada and Ireland. So these are kind of pictures of totalitarianism depriving you not of life, because it's very hard for them. They can do that and will eventually. Mousehead power flows from the barrel of a gun. But here, liberty is being infringed upon. But the easiest one to infringe upon is rights to property, and in particular, its use in the pursuit of happiness. So I'll just point out that the World Economic Forum had a symposium or an interview maybe 2 years ago, and they had this large CEO of a European company whose name I can never remember, unfortunately, but this is a genuine quote. It's actually on video. We could dig it up and find it. And what he says is that the goal is, that what they realized is that most people don't want the product itself that, say, a corporation produces. They want the benefit of the product. So if they can retain ownership rights to the product and sell you the benefit of the product, then you get what you want. And they get to retain ownership. So you actually will, in the words of the World Economic Forum, own nothing and be happy. Because you get
And
all
that's the direction that like Xbox is taking. If you think about it, people used to own DVDs. Now they use streaming services. And, you know, like what's happening is you can buy a movie on Amazon Prime or something, but then if for whatever reason you lose your account or something, or you break a rule, all of a sudden your account's gone, and all of a sudden that movie you paid for is gone. The newest Xbox is getting rid of physical copies. So you buy the games digitally, but if something happens where you lose your account, you'll realize, wow, you know, it was nice having a physical copy of that game, because now it's gone and I'm arguing over the phone. It's like, but I bought the game, and somebody on the other line is like, well, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Like, the game's gone, even though you bought it. So we're heading in that direction in a number of different areas where you get the benefits of the thing, but you don't actually own the thing.
The benefits of the products. You just don't own any products. But the problem is, so everything, what does that look like in practice? Everything is rented or by subscription is what that looks like. You don't own a car. You call a car service. All the cars are owned by somebody else. And it works maybe like Uber, and somebody or the car itself drives you around, but you don't actually own that car. Well, it turns out that that car might only take you places that are approved by whoever does own the car, or by whatever system and whatever corrupt systems it's connected, that company is connected to, or that individual is connected to. It'll only take you those places. So you don't actually have liberty. You can't go when you want to. You have to go when the cars are available and on the car schedule, which might be very convenient, or it might actually just start to do like every service that has monopoly.
See, I feel like what classical liberals don't realize is that it's their system that got us here. They're the ones who did the revolution against the Christian monarchies, and they paved the way for us to get here. You know, this guy's talking about the importance of everyone being created equal. And ultimately, that's what Marxists are crying about, dude. The Marxists are crying about equality, and we need all these authoritarian regimes in place to defend our rights. We need to have our rights taken away to defend the rights of the oppressed. Is kind of how it worked out.
Power and become very inconvenient, making you wait for, you know, schedule hours or days in advance to get a car to take you to a very limited number of places that have to be approved according to your social credit score. So your ability to use your property.
That's seriously what happened. It's like, we're oppressed. We need to take everybody's rights away so we can defend the oppressed. So we can defend the rights of the oppressed. Like, damn, dude. Yeah, I'm going to spend some time trying to get these thoughts together, because I don't know exactly why yet, but these classical liberal guys are, like, we agree what the problem is, but they don't understand how they got us here.
Basically vanishes. They're talking now about moving into a car sharing model, that people won't be allowed to own their own vehicles, but there'll be a car sharing model. Many people will share the same vehicle that will be collectively owned by them. And so you're going to have to share ownership rights. And guess what? There's going to have to be systems and all these kind of policies, et cetera, that manage, figure out, and tally up who gets to use it when and how. So this is the idea. So you have subscriptions for your movies, subscription for your music. You don't own any of this stuff anymore. You used to have tapes, you used to have CDs, etc. You don't have any of these things anymore. You used to be able to have an MP3 player and have MP3s. I guess you still can, but most people use streaming services. You don't own anything. Well, imagine that for cars. Imagine that for virtually every hard good. You don't need to own, say, a washing machine. There's a laundromat that you can go to, et cetera, et cetera. So you can have your property rights abrogated that way.
But here's what I just thought of, is that all of these systems have won basically through the free markets. Like, nobody put a gun to your head and made you use Spotify. Nobody made you use streaming services. You know, when Netflix came out, I remember Netflix used to be you order the DVDs in the mail. My friend had Netflix very early. Like, you'd rent a DVD in the mail. Everybody chose these services, bro, through free markets. Like, it was marketed to us and sold to us, and this is what we wanted. And then it out-competed buying physical copies and buying things. And we kind of paved the way for this with our own right to personal liberty and pursuit of happiness. We were all just pursuing happiness to get here. We've been misled because people are not created equal. We got outsmarted by these fucking demons.
Way. And in fact, your use of your property and the ESG scam on large scale is already this fully implemented. It may not be trickled down to you with social credit score limiting how you can use your property, not only where you go, but how you, so you have money, you can't buy a plane ticket because you said a bad thing about Joe Biden, or you have money, but you can't buy meat because you already have too much meat this year, and so you're only allowed to have like 3 pieces of beef a month or whatever, or a year, and you've already used them up. So they're limiting what you can do with your property. These are kind of social credit kind of programs, programmable currency kind of programs, but the ESG program at the level of corporations is basically already fully implemented. And corporate owners really should recognize this because they are not allowed to do with their property as they want. They are not allowed to use their property in the pursuit of happiness. Shell Oil cannot use its physical capital the way that it wants to extract and distribute and refine petroleum, or build new refineries if it wants to, or build new distribution centers, or dig more oil out of the ground, because that would violate the environmental standards required of their ESG industry. They are not allowed or able to use their property in their pursuit of happiness. It is considered their inalienable right, which, by the way, they can't even, at least metaphysically, give away. They are merely curtailing themselves in their own right that they can't even lose. And so the ESG system is actually broadly, you have your company, ESG tells you how you're going to run it, what you're going to implement, what you're going to do, how you're going to market, how you're going to expand, when you're going to contract, when you're going to do this, when you're going to do that, what you can invest in, what you cannot invest in, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
It has already stolen your inalienable right to property and its use in the pursuit of happiness. And this will come down to individuals like it has come down to individuals in China. And it will come under the guise of a social credit system.
When people are thinking about this classical liberalism, they're thinking about the middle class. But, we're all created equal. We all have our right to the pursuit of happiness. Well, the creator of OnlyFans, he had the right to create OnlyFans, and he's just pursuing happiness by selling that shit to everybody. The owner of McDonald's is just pursuing happiness, and they have the right and freedom. And ultimately, authoritarianism is somebody who should care about the people, and the best bet for them to care about the people is to truly be a real Christian and have the Bible as a known. The liberals are saying that anything can be disproven. We fully accept that anything can be disproven, so nothing is accepted forever. It starts with the Bible being accepted forever, and there'd be no debate on if that's ever going to be undone. I think liberals kind of paved the way for moral relativism. But, yeah, really, it was rich people who didn't want to get bossed around by the king. It's the people who rule the world now. Like, their descendants are the ones who wanted to overthrow the monarchs. I'm not saying the monarchies were perfect. There were lots of corrupt kings. But democracy ends up just being like the cabal. It's the corruption that most people don't recognize until it's too late.
With programmable digital currencies, etc., or whatever model they happen to use. But you get the idea. The point of that is, in fact, to abrogate, to alienate your inalienable rights, and to trick you through what they call social contract theory, with Klaus Schwab repeatedly saying, we're going to rewrite the social contract, we're going to rewrite the social contract. Most recently, in an interview, he said, we're going to rewrite the social contract away from an economy of production and consumption into an economy of caring and sharing. So the economy is going to determine what you're going to care about, how you're going to care about it, when you're going to care about it. That'll probably determine your access. And sharing is going to just be redistribution. You will own nothing and you'll be happy. You will have no property rights. But remember the point. If you don't have your inalienable rights to life, liberty, and property, they can control what you think.
And what it comes down to is, we all have the right to own property. Just go buy some property, dude. That's your right. We don't have any fucking money anymore. And people are getting pushed out of the system and like, this is it. We're all equal and we all have our rights to life, liberty, and property. Yeah, well, your life sucks and your liberty is hindered by the fact you don't have any money and you can't afford property. And now the people who are equals and we're just pursuing happiness, bro, they're just buying up all the property. And what it comes down to is like somebody should have stopped this for the best interest of the people. And oh, we're just a bunch of equals doing what we want to do, and we won. It really goes back to what Stefan Monalou said. The free markets are like an IQ test, and you lost fair and square. Well, it's not fair and square. This system was created by deist Freemasons who kind of passively aggressively removed the Bible as a foundation for how society should be.
Control what you say.
And yeah, the overwhelming Christian majority kept the king in check. At the end of the day, I truly believe it was easier to deal with a tyrannical king than it is to deal with this modern tyrannical system.
Can control what you do. They can control what you believe. Now, as a last note for the religious out there, because I said the American experiment was founded in religious liberty, you have to realize the fire you're playing with if you think that you can abrogate this right to solve the problem, because you cannot. First of all, it's inalienable. You don't have any authority to take it away from people. You have no authority to bend anybody's damn knee. Stop saying it. You're ridiculous. Okay? You're not going to bend any knees, and if you do, you've become the enemy you think you're fighting. You're not solving the problem. You are the problem. But here's the fundamental...
We're the problem because we're going to take away the right of somebody to subjugate and dominate us. And what is that based off of? See, the only given in this world is Christ and the Bible. And I get why that, like, people don't like that, but this paved the way for moral relativism. I can see it, and now it's just a matter of being able to articulate it. They're fucking obsessed with these morals that they pulled out of their butt. Like, why? Why are people created equal? Why do we have the right to life, liberty, and property? Oh, because a bunch of, like, fancy pants classical liberals said so. It's like, wrong. It maybe sounds good, and yeah, you can, like, come up with some reasons, but you said yourself that we're not God, and people can be refuted at any point. Okay, then you maybe think somebody could refute the idea that we're all created equal. No, because I said so. They put down their foot on these liberal laws, which there's no basis for that authority. This guy's going on a rant right now on how people don't have authority. Well, you don't have authority to shove this liberal system down my throat. And now he's going to lecture me about how, oh, if you want to put a king in place who tells Klaus Schwab to eat a dick and sends all these people packing and takes them out of power, then you're the problem. It's like, no, Klaus Schwab is the problem, and you seem to understand that. But when we start talking about, hey, you know how we could deal with this? By instituting a based monarch who does something about it. No, you have no right. You have no authority over Klaus Schwab. Well, Klaus Schwab is about to have authority over all of us. You're the problem if you take away authority from the people subjugating you. They wank off to these classical liberal values, dude, that aren't really that great. You know, life, liberty, and property, that's great. I do appreciate that, but they've put it above everything. They put freedom above everything, and what they seem to forget is that the people ruling over us, they got there with their freedom. We all had freedom, and we've been out-competed. So it's like, well, you lost fair and square, so now we have to eat the bugs and have our property taken away and get subjugated because you have no right to take away their freedom. It's like, dude, fuck you. And the people who rule over us now, they're the people who wanted this system because they knew they had the means to do this.
You don't have any authority to take it away from people. You have no authority to bend anybody's damn knee. Stop saying it. You're ridiculous.
You're ridiculous. What if we create a huge fucking army and kill you, dude? That's ridiculous. You're taking away my authority. Okay, well, now you're dead. And that's what war is. And clearly there's been lots of wars. And how do we have the right to go win all these wars we've been winning? Because we won. Because we're on top. Clearly, some people win and some people fucking lose. And fuck liberalism, dude. Like, just listen to how cringe this guy sounds.
Religious liberty, you have to realize the fire you're playing with if you think that you can abrogate this right to solve the problem, because you cannot. First of all, it's inalienable. You don't have any authority to take it away from people. You have no authority to bend anybody's damn knee. Stop saying it.
Might is right. Might is right. If we got more guns and army and we're bigger and stronger and we're Christian, then we fucking win, dude. They've tricked the world into agreeing to this game for peace, and it's the utopia. It's more obvious that Marxists were about a utopia, that communism is a utopia, but this liberal idea that we're all going to agree to these values that we pulled out of our butt on life, liberty, and property, and that's higher than the Bible, and you have absolutely no right to stop people's pursuit of liberty. Klaus Schwab is pursuing happiness. The people who dominated the world are pursuing happiness, and you have no right to take away their freedom. People forget about the freedom of the rich. You need to be able to keep money in check. It used to be the divine right of kings. Now it's the divine right of money. And what did Jesus say about money? It doesn't matter what Jesus said about money. You have no right. We should have killed these people, dude.
You're ridiculous. Okay? You're not going to...
You're ridiculous. Yeah, sorry, dude. That's not enough. It's basically your fault that we're here, dude.
bend any knees, and if you do, you've become the enemy you think you're fighting.
You're the enemy just because you bent the knee. What if we bent the knee of Karl Marx? What if we bent the knee of Klaus Schwab? I see a lot of knees that should bend, bro. Oh, but we can't because of my precious liberal values. Your liberal values have failed. These people were pursuing their liberty. I think we should bend some knees, dude. Like, what do you mean we can't? Is it physically impossible? No, it's possible. But my values, dude. What about my values?
You're not solving the problem, you are the problem. But here's the fundamental thing. If your theology, let's say that you're in this kind of hardcore integralist, neo-integralist, or whatever, ecumenical integralist, Christian nationalist view, and you're going to bend the knee and whatever else, all this crap some of them, the hardliners in there say, you better understand what you're doing, because you're, I assume, a religious person.
You're going against liberal values. Yep. Yes. Yes meme. Based yes meme. You better understand what you're doing, mister. Yeah, I'm overthrowing tyrants. No, you can't just go against these rules that we made up to overthrow tyrants. You have to do it by our system that we used to dominate the world. No.
And you therefore believe that you shall be judged. And what you are doing, if you don't have, I know you believe you have every jot and tittle of your theology correct, because you basically think you're God, but let me just assure you, you don't. You don't. And if you don't have every jot and tittle of your theology correct, and you're forcing other people to believe, or pretend to believe at least, to act like they believe according to a theology that's not absolutely correct.
Okay, so nobody knows whether or not their theology is correct. Aha! You see, this guy's pretty smart. I watched this guy's few lectures. He'd probably give me some trouble in a debate. He's older. He's very educated. But now you're talking theology. Now you're kind of stepping into my world. And this is ultimately why I'm a Catholic, guys. And then, you know, I could say that maybe Orthodox is right, but the Catholic Church traces back to Peter being the first pope who was handed the keys. Jesus told Peter, I'm leaving you with the responsibility to create the church. And that church's lineage is the Catholic Church. So ultimately, you're going by the idea that the church founded by Christ will not fail and its theology will be the best. So this guy's saying, it's impossible for you to have correct theology. You think you're God? You can't have the correct theology unless you're God. It's like, no, this is the church founded by God. This is the church founded by God. So, oh, you can never know theology. Oh, you have to bend the knee to liberals because you'll never understand theology.
Correct. You're damning their souls to hell, and you will be judged. You're playing with...
You might be sending people to hell with the church that Christ founded. And this guy doesn't care about religion, dude. He just wants to stop you from being able to attack him. He's just like, oh, I guess it's impossible for you to attack me because you're not God and you can't know anything. And that's what liberals are saying, is basically, we can't know anything. But they claim, like, dude, this is where science came from. And that's what they boast. That's what they beat you over the head with. I listened to this guy's hour-long lecture the other day, and most of it was going on about the achievements of science. And then he's like, and then people try to say that Francis Bacon was an alchemist. It doesn't matter. Or they point out that John Locke was wrong about the tabula rasa. It doesn't matter. Because liberalism is all about admitting that any man can be refuted at any time because he's not God. So when they're wrong, they're not penalized. But when they're right, they boast it up. So it's like they can't be criticized because, like, it doesn't matter that I was wrong. It doesn't matter when we're wrong, but we get to brag about when we're right. And if you claim that you know anything, then you're saying you're God. We just know that there is God, and we know that this is God. And we know that this church is the direct lineage that traces back to when God lived.
You don't have every jot and tittle of your theology correct, and you're forcing other people to believe, or pretend to believe at least, to act like they believe according to a theology that's not absolutely correct. You're damning their souls to hell, and you will be judged.
The church is sending people to hell because they're not God, because they don't know anything. Oh, well, I guess we have to listen to you, right? So you know something. So this guy knows something, but the church doesn't.
You're playing with fire. Go ahead and do that. Your own theology commands that you are making a gigantic mistake by thinking that you can tell people how they're going to believe by depriving them of their natural
So
right.
our own theology commands that we can't know anything and Christians can't have any power? I don't think so, buddy. This guy's a swindler. This guy's a swindler, dude. This guy's like poking you in the nose. I just imagine like a big modern crusader army, and this guy's like, hey, mister, you're playing with fire, mister. You can't bend the knee. It's like, dude, you have 30 seconds to explain why we shouldn't just kill you and take our nations back.
Rights to life, liberty, and property to be used in the pursuit of their happiness, which means you have to let them believe things.
BlackRock has the right to property, dude. That's what it comes down to. BlackRock had the right to pursue happiness and own property, and now they own all the property. And who are you to bend the knee, mister? You're playing with fire. How dare you take away these rights assigned to BlackRock by Freemasons who created a society that failed?
You don't want them to believe. You have to let them be wrong and let God sort it out. Because if we take a theological approach to this, the issue is between them and God. The issue is not between them and God with you as an intermediary. And if you are wrong, that's on you. That's all on you. Because
But what if you're wrong? And what if everything of the modern world points to the fact that you're wrong?
you are forcing people to go against what they might have otherwise done with their beliefs, with the contents of their beliefs, with their faith, with their religion, with their conscience, that might actually have got the theology right. And that is a pretty damn heavy sin. But I don't want to wax theological. I just want to point that out. You have to understand that tyranny is tyranny, and tyranny is wrong because tyranny is wrong. And the reason that tyranny is wrong is because the fundamental axiom of classical liberalism is actually correct. And that is that they take these truths to be self-evident. That means it's a fundamental axiom that all men are created equal and are...
You can just hear it in his voice, dude. This guy's voice is just beta.
endowed by their creator, which is the laws of nature and nature's God, with certain inalienable rights among...
Nature's God. See, when I was studying, what's that book called? Fire in the Minds of Men. The revolutionary faiths talk about nature's God and a return to nature, the natural state of things. These people manipulate you by telling you this is nature's God. This is the natural way. Oh yeah? And where are you getting that? Well, John Locke said, who cares? These people have made themselves the authority by saying that this is the natural way of things. When the best authority we've ever had is the Bible. That's the one document that we have reason to believe in. Good reason. And I believe there's a couple of flaws. I think there's room for some error, but we have reason to trust in the church that was founded by Christ. This guy's trying to swindle and manipulate that and basically make you listen to Freemason classical liberals who were right about everything for some reason. They weren't.
These are life, liberty, and property to be used in the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, so that's ultimately my critique, is that the rich people who dominated us, they used this system to do it. And it's like, oh, well, they're just smarter than you, and they're just better than you. Well, what happened to everybody's created equal? That's another assumption. That's another law of liberalism, is that everybody's created equal. Well, these people have used their liberal rights to dominate the world, and it needed to be stopped by an authority putting its foot down, somebody who had a position of power outside of money, somebody who was appointed an authority who didn't get there by winning in free markets. No, you're taking away my rights. Well, you're an asshole, and everybody who's supposedly equal, they all agree that you should have your rights taken away because you suck. We're the authority. Thank you for defending classical liberalism, the political philosophy that formed our nation. And look what our nation is now. I want to leave a comment here, dude. So who has the authority to declare these liberal laws? Klaus Schwab and BlackRock are just pursuing happiness through property ownership. Who are you to suggest that that right should be taken away? And I'm sure he'll say that right shouldn't be taken away. Yeah, so you're saying that we're doomed then. We can't fight back. And of course I don't know how to spell Klaus Schwab, and he's going to be like, you can't even spell Klaus Schwab. Am I really going to sit here and listen to someone who can't spell Klaus Schwab? It's like, dude, who cares what that guy's name is? Schwab. Schwab. So who has the authority to declare these liberal laws? Klaus Schwab and BlackRock are just pursuing happiness through property ownership. You are playing with fire, mister, if you try to do anything about it. You fail to recognize how your kind paved the way for what we live in today. An authority outside of money needed to say no to the powers that gamed the system and are about to enslave all of us. Money rules in the classical liberal world. There will always be someone on top. which on some level seems to refute the idea that we are all created equal. Another liberal law that was pulled out of thin air. The only given in this world is Christ. And we are able to know the correct theology by looking to his church. Founded by Christ himself, who gave the keys to Peter. Boom! Smeared! So who has the authority to declare these liberal laws? Klaus Schwab and BlackRock are just pursuing happiness through property ownership. You are playing with fire, mister, if you try to do anything about it. LMAO, you fail to recognize how your kind paved the way for what we live in today. An authority outside of money needed to say no to the powers that gamed the system and are about to enslave all of us. Money rules in the classical liberal world. There will always be someone on top, which on some level seems to refute the idea that we are all created equal. Another liberal law that was pulled out of thin air. The only given in this world is Christ, and we are able to know the correct theology by looking to his church, founded by Christ himself, who gave the keys to Peter.